with the new school year, that means families with teenagers are training lots of new drivers out there. We all need to keep that in mind. But having a new driver in your home also means making sure that you understand the basic laws of legal liability of your auto insurance. So here to give us some things that we need to keep in mind as we send those teens out on the road is attorney Tom Sinas with Sinas Dramus Law Firm. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. You're right. We have so many families out there who are undertaking this Herculean task of training our new drivers, so much on their plate. And I thought maybe it'd be a good time to talk about some of the legal issues they should be aware of so that they can address those as part of this big task of parenting.
All right. So in your experience, what is one rule that parents really don't usually know regarding legal liability?
I think if I had to pick one, I would pick a law known as the Owner's Liability Statute. And this is a state statute that's been around in Michigan for a very long time. And it says as follows: the owner of a motor vehicle is liable for an injury caused by the negligent operation of the motor vehicle whenever that negligence consists of a violation of statute or the failure to use ordinary care. What does that mean? It means that if you own a car, you as the owner are liable if the driver of that car causes a crash and injures someone else. It's another form of what we talked about in the past of strict liability, or maybe what we call vicarious liability, meaning that if you have a teenager, in this case, and you are the parent and you own the vehicle, and the teenager causes a crash, not only is the teenager liable for causing the crash, but the parent, if the parent is an owner of the motor vehicle, the parent is automatically liable. And you are an owner, most simply, you're an owner whenever you hold legal title to a vehicle. So I think what's most common that I see are that parents initially own a car, maybe it was a car that they were using, and it's titled in their name, and they're going to allow their teenager to drive the car, and that they're not thinking, because there's a lot on their plate, right? They're not thinking, well, wait a minute, if my teenager causes a crash, or really if anyone else, does not just limited to teenagers, causes a crash, I as the owner am liable for that. Now there's exceptions. If someone takes your car without your permission, then that liability doesn't exist. But in the context of teenagers, it goes on to say that if someone driving your car is one of your relatives, then the law presumes, if they're one of the members of your immediate family, the law presumes that the driver has permission. So I think owner liability is the one thing that most parents maybe don't think about when they've got all this on their plate.
All right. What is something that a parent or a caregiver should consider if they think maybe their teen isn't quite ready to hit the road?
Well, the obvious and most practical thing, more training, more supervision. Right? I mean, it goes without saying that this is the most dangerous thing that we do. And it can be the most harmful thing in terms of crashes. But in terms of legal liability, we also have a concept in Michigan that's called negligent entrustment. It's a fancy phrase, but it basically stands for the principle that if I own a car and I allow someone to use it who I know is not a good driver, or I have reason to know is not a good driver, that's a separate reason for when I, as the owner, can become liable. So there's two ways, right? There's the first way, the owner liability way, that vicarious liability. But there's this other way, and that is that you, as the owner, should not entrust your car to someone who you know or have reason to know isn't a good driver. So more training. Okay. Really can't say this enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what insurance considerations should we really keep in mind then?
Okay, we talked about this earlier with dog bites. Mm-hmm. It's all about being transparent and forthcoming with your insurance company. And this is tricky with teenage drivers because, as we talked about a minute ago, a lot of times people have cars that are titled one way, insured one way, and then all of a sudden that becomes the teenager's car. Well, if you have a teenager who's going to be using that car on a regular basis, you need to make sure that your insurance company knows that that's happening. If the insurance company issued you a policy thinking that you as the parent were just driving all of your young kids around, and then all of a sudden the teenager is driving the car, then if heaven forbid something happens, there could be a situation where there may not be coverage. There may not be insurance coverage afforded for the crash. This gets into a complicated area of law that's hard to summarize here, But you don't ever get into this problem if you're forthcoming and thorough with your insurance company about who is driving your car. So that means either having the driver officially added as a driver on your insurance policy, or even going so far as to have the teenager listed as what we call a named insured. But no matter what, the basic theme is the same. When your life circumstances change when it comes to car insurance, make sure your auto insurer knows about it so that if heaven forbid something happens, you have coverage and you're not worried about not having coverage on top of this tragic thing that happens.
All right. As if sending them out on the road isn't stressful enough, where can they go to learn more information?
Well, from the legal side of things, they can look to our website, www.sinusdramus.com. Shoot us an email at info@sinusdramus.com, or give us a call in West Michigan at 616-301-3333.